I stood by the wide glass window of my flagship store, watching the reflection of a life I had once only scribbled in a notebook. The city buzzed outside, honking horns, hurried footsteps, neon signs flickering. But inside, everything was calm. My boutique smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh leather, a fragrance I'd come to associate with victory. The soft hum of conversations drifted through the store, my staff greeting customers with practiced warmth. I adjusted the sleeve of my silk blouse, smoothing a wrinkle that wasn't really there. Old habits, always checking, always perfecting. The gold watch on my wrist ticked steadily, but my heart it raced. Because today they were coming. The same people who once laughed at me, who called my dream cute at best and pathetic at worst. The ones who smirked when I opened a single tiny shop on a dusty street corner, predicting I'd shut down within months. My phone buzzed against the glass desk, a text confirming their arrival. My lips curved, not in a smile but in something sharper, tinged with irony. For years, I'd hidden the truth. Posted modest updates, avoided boasting, let them believe whatever story they wanted to tell about me. But now they were walking straight into the truth I had built brick by brick, sale by sale, night after sleepless night. And I was ready, because they mocked my shop. And today, they would step into my chain. I wasn't always the woman who wore silk blouses and managed a staff of 50. Once, I was just Emily, 23, broke, and stubbornly clutching a dream everyone else thought was a joke. I still remember the day I told my family. We were crowded around the dinner table, the smell of roast chicken heavy in the air. My father leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, as I announced with shaky breath, "I'm opening a shop." Silence. Then laughter. "Emily," my older brother Mark said, smirking over his glass of soda, "people like you don't run businesses. You'll be back asking for a desk job within 6 months." Even my mother, gentle as she usually was, gave me a pitying look. "Sweetheart, retail is hard. And you? You've never even managed your own bills." Their words stung worse than I expected. My throat tightened, my fingers curled under the table to stop them from shaking. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced myself to nod like their ridicule didn't matter. But deep down it burned. That night, I sat on my bed with tears smudging my notebook, the same battered spiral-bound journal my grandmother had given me when I was 16. She'd pressed it into my hands with a simple piece of advice: write your dreams down. Dreams written are dreams remembered. The pages were filled with sketches of storefronts, lists of products, scribbled price tags in different colored pens. It was messy, childish even, but it was mine. Every time I flipped through it, I could almost hear her voice urging me on, long after she had passed. So when my family dismissed me, when my so-called friends joked behind my back, "Emily's running a lemonade stand for adults," I held onto that notebook. The first decisive move was terrifying. I signed the lease for a tiny, almost laughable space wedged between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The floor tiles were cracked, the ceiling leaked when it rained, and the only sign I could afford was a hand-painted board I designed myself. Still, the day I turned the key in that lock, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't confidence, not yet. It was defiance. I was determined to prove that even if my shop was small, my resolve was not. The early days were brutal. I'd unlock the shop at dawn, sweeping dust off the cracked tiles before the street even woke up. My fingers smelled of detergent and cardboard from unpacking boxes. My back ached from hauling merchandise I could barely afford. Most mornings, the shop was empty except for me and the buzz of the flickering fluorescent light overhead. Customers walked past without stopping. Some glanced in and smirked, as though my tiny shop was nothing more than a temporary hobby. I smiled through it, even when doubt gnawed at me. Nights were no easier. I'd sit at my little counter, the same notebook open beside me, crunching numbers on a calculator that had missing buttons. I would circle each expense in red ink, then flip to the next page where I wrote encouraging notes to myself, half pep talk, half prayer. One sale is progress. Keep going. Tomorrow will be better. My first real victory came 3 weeks in. A woman named Claire, a middle-aged teacher with kind eyes, stepped into my shop on a rainy afternoon. She bought a scarf, complimented the way I had displayed it, and told me, "You've got an eye for this." That one sentence carried me through months of struggle. But the world didn't suddenly grow kind. Suppliers treated me like a nuisance. "You should let your husband call us," one man said over the phone, his tone dripping with condescension. I bit back the urge to tell him I didn't even have a husband. Instead, I asked for discounts until my voice cracked from negotiating. It was during one of those exhausting weeks that I met Linda, the owner of a bookstore down the street. She was in her 50s, sharp but warm, the kind of woman whose presence filled a room without trying. One evening, she walked in, browsed quietly, and said, "Your shop reminds me of when I started out." Everyone thought I'd fail too. Her mentorship became a lifeline. She taught me about supplier contracts, marketing, even how to rearrange displays so customers lingered longer. "It's not just about selling," she told me once, sipping her black coffee at my counter. "It's about creating an experience people come back to." So I listened. I learned. I failed. I learned again. There were days I questioned everything. Nights I curled up on my shop's dusty floor after closing, staring at the ceiling, wondering if Mark had been right. Maybe I was destined to crawl back for a desk job. But then there were the small wins that kept me alive. The first time I made enough to cover rent without dipping into savings. The first repeat customer. The first weekend I actually sold out of a product. With every milestone, my confidence grew, even if I kept it hidden. Online, I downplayed my progress. To my family, I said things like, "It's okay, just surviving," because admitting success felt dangerous. It meant opening myself up to their judgment all over again. But privately, I was building something bigger than I dared to say aloud. The shop expanded, first by adding new shelves, then by renting the space next door. My hands grew calloused, my heart grew stronger, and my visions stretched wider. They mocked my dream. Yet slowly, I was learning that dreams, watered with persistence, grow roots deep enough to survive any storm. The day they arrived, the city sky was painted in soft gold, the kind of morning that feels like it's holding its breath. I stood in my flagship store, surrounded by the quiet luxury I had once only dreamed of: polished marble floors, warm pendant lights cascading over displays, and rows of perfectly folded merchandise that whispered elegance instead of shouting it. Everything about the space told a story, my story, though none of them knew it yet. The revolving glass door spun, and in walked my family. My brother Mark led the way, still with that swagger that once made me feel small. Behind him trailed my mother, her cautious eyes scanning the room, and my father, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, as though bracing against a chill that wasn't really there. They paused. I watched their faces shift, confusion, then realization. Their eyes darted across the gleaming shelves, the staff in crisp uniforms, the bustling energy of customers who greeted me with familiarity and respect. This is yours," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft jazz playing through the speakers. I let the silence hang, savoring it. Then, with a calm smile, I said, "Not just this. All of it." Mark frowned. "What do you mean, all of it?" I turned, gesturing toward the large framed map on the back wall. Tiny gold pins glittered across the city and beyond. "These are my stores. 37 locations. Soon to be 40. The weight of the truth settled over them like a heavy curtain. My father's lips parted, but no words came out. My mother's hand clutched her purse strap tighter, as if holding onto something solid. And Mark actually laughed, though it cracked halfway through. "You're joking." I walked toward him, heels clicking against the marble, every step a reminder of the years I had carried his mockery. "They mocked my little shop," I said softly, almost like I was telling a secret. "But now I own the chain." The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever known. A few customers glanced curiously at us, sensing something significant was unfolding. My staff carried on smoothly, greeting clients, folding merchandise, ringing up sales, all under my ownership, my name, my vision. My father finally cleared his throat. "Emily, why didn't you tell us?" "Because you wouldn't have believed me," I replied, steady, but not unkind. You never believed in me until you had no choice but to see it with your own eyes. My mother blinked rapidly, her gaze softening. We thought you'd fail. And maybe I almost did, I admitted. There were nights I didn't know if I'd make rent. But every scar, every sleepless night, they built this. I built this. Mark's expression hardened, pride fighting shame in his eyes. So, what? You're just what? Better than us now. I tilted my head, meeting his gaze without flinching. Not better. Just proof that I never needed your approval to succeed. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. They had come expecting to find me scraping by, begging for validation. Instead, they stood in the center of an empire carved from the very dream they mocked. And I wasn't finished. I gestured toward the plush seating area near the front. Sit. There's something we need to talk about. For the first time in my life, they obeyed me without question. They sat stiffly on the cream leather couches, the same ones I had chosen after weeks of debating fabric swatches and textures. Back then, I had worried whether the purchase was too extravagant. Now, watching my family perch awkwardly on them, I realized the seats weren't just furniture. They were thrones of truth. I remained standing, arms folded lightly, not out of arrogance, but out of a quiet certainty I had earned. You wanted to see me? I began, my voice smooth, conversational, yet edged with the steel I had learned to carry. So tell me why now? My mother spoke first, fingers twisting the strap of her purse. We heard things, Emily, about your stores, about your success. We wanted to. She hesitated, her eyes darting toward my father. We wanted to see for ourselves. My father leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. We misjudged you. I misjudged you. But maybe we can start over. Mark scoffed. Yeah, well, I think it's obvious you don't need us. But if you're smart, you'll know family is family. You'll want us around. His tone was sharp, almost challenging, and it made me smile because it showed he still didn't understand. You're right, I said slowly, turning toward him. Family is family, which is why I'm going to set some conditions. Their faces shifted, confusion, then unease. I let the pause stretch before continuing. Mark, I said, locking eyes with him. You spent years mocking me, telling me I wasn't capable. If you want to be part of my life now, I need you to support the next person in this family who dares to dream. No more cynicism, no more cutting them down. You will encourage them, even if their idea sounds foolish to you. His mouth opened as if to argue, but he closed it again, jaw tight. I turned to my father. You raised me with rules, discipline, but you never gave me respect. If you want to stand in my stores as family, you must learn to respect women, not just me, but every woman who dares to step into business, into leadership, into power. That means no more dismissing, no more minimizing. Respect isn't optional anymore. My father's brows furrowed, shame flickering across his features. He nodded once, curtly, like a man conceding defeat. Finally, I looked at my mother. Her eyes were already wet, her lips trembling. And you, I said gently. You loved me, but you doubted me. I need you to trust me now, not because I've proven myself, but because I always deserved that trust. Your condition is simple. Believe in me without needing the evidence first. Tears slid down her cheeks and she nodded, whispering, I can do that. I let the silence settle again, breathing it in. For years they had set the rules. They had told me who I could be, what I could do, how far I could go. But not anymore. Now the terms were mine. And though my tone carried compassion, it also carried finality. I would not bend. I would not shrink. If they wanted to walk beside me, they had to rise to my level, not drag me back down to theirs. Change never comes in a single moment. It comes in small, halting steps. In the weeks that followed, I began to notice those steps. Mark, who once sneered at my ambitions, started reaching out with genuine curiosity. One afternoon, he sent me a link to his friend's startup and asked, How do you think they could grow? It wasn't perfect, his tone was still brusque, but it was a start. My father surprised me most. He walked into one of my stores unannounced, not to criticize but to observe. I watched him shake hands with my female manager, addressing her with a respect I had never seen him offer a woman outside the family. He caught my eye across the room and gave a brief nod. For him, it was an apology wrapped in silence. And my mother, she softened in ways I didn't expect. She called more often, not to question my choices, but to listen. Sometimes she'd say, "I believe in you, Emily," as if practicing the words until they felt natural. Each time, I felt a part of my younger self heal a little more. One evening, after a long day, I sat alone in my office. The city lights glittered outside my window, and on my desk lay the same spiral-bound notebook my grandmother had given me years ago. Its pages were worn, corners curled, ink smudged from tears I'd once shed. I flipped to the first page, a clumsy sketch of a storefront, complete with handwritten notes like "big window for displays" and "warm lighting." I laughed softly. Back then, it was nothing more than a fragile dream. Now, it was a chain of stores spanning across the state. I ran my fingers over the faded ink, whispering, "I did it, Grandma. I really did it." And in that quiet moment, I realized the journey wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. The people who mocked me, they weren't my downfall. They were the wind that tested my roots, the storm that forced me to grow stronger. Without their doubt, perhaps I wouldn't have fought this hard. I closed the notebook gently, a smile tugging at my lips. And as if the universe wanted me to seal the story with one last line, the words slipped out, steady and sure, the perfect truth for anyone who would ever hear my voice. They mocked my shop, but today I own the chain.